Here are a couple of images of Mars taken with the Hubble Space Telescope. And these are a couple of late 19th century globes of Mars. And they show the canals running across them. But what's quite cool, if you do sort of squint at them, you can see all the dark features are basically right. You know, there's definitely... So they weren't totally up to left. Well, a large part of the Martian Canal phenomenon was that there were a few very important supporters. And a very distinguished astronomer invites you to look through his telescope and says, if you look through this telescope and look at Mars, you'll see the canals running across the surface. Well, if you look at that eyepiece and you can see the canals, well, there's something wrong with you. So it's sort of like the Emperor's New Clothes, I think. Well, we now know these canals don't exist. But anyway, first half of the 20th century, lots of serious scientists thought there was civilization on Mars. Somewhat similarly, but not quite, was the idea that Venus had life on it. Venus is covered in thick white clouds, and there's an idea that arisen that these are clouds of water vapour, and this meant the surface of Venus is really wet. This quote at the top, and this illustration, both come from a book about life in the solar system published in 1910. There was a firm belief, well, I wouldn't say a firm belief, but there was a belief amongst some astronomers that Venus was a planet, a bit like basically prehistoric Earth, sort of like Earth in dinosaur times. So this was an idea that was out there. The other thing that happened as the first part of the 20th century is science fiction really took off. And this brought ideas of aliens and spaceships and voyages to other worlds into the public imagination. And here's some great science fiction magazines from the 1930s. I do love the cover illustrations. Here's the Earth being smashed by an asteroid, and that's a really bad day they're having there. And this one here's quite cool because it has a sort of flying saucer on the front. So these were ideas which were out there. The next thing really important thing was the Second World War. The Second World War was the war of secret weapons. Things like jet engines, rockets, and atomic weapons were all invented during it. And these were all things that had been science fiction. And suddenly, in a very short time, it became real. And there would be an idea out there that if these things, which are science fiction, can suddenly become real, there'd be other things from science fiction that are real too. So in this sort of heady idea that there was life in other worlds, that lots of things you think of science fiction could become real, one day in 1947, a chap called Kenneth Arnold, this is him, was involved in a rescue operation. He was flying over a mountain range in Washington State, looking for a plane that crashed. Sorry, he was a pilot, he owned his own aircraft. And as he was doing this search, he spotted a formation of 9 strange, very, very, very fast objects which he reckoned flew between some of the neighbouring mountaintops and then disappeared. And he didn't have a radio on his plane, but he was so shocked by this, he diverted his plane, landed at the next airport, and ran the police and the newspapers and so on. And this report really, really took off. Now, he said in his description of these objects that they move like saucers skipping over water. This idea if you throw a saucer or a disc and it's bouncing over water. He said that's a certain movement. But everyone misunderstood him, and they wrote down that he had seen flying saucers. But in fact, he didn't see flying saucers. This is him, of an artist's impression that he approved of the things he saw. And you see, it doesn't look like a saucer at all. And this is one of the things I think, it's strange to me that the whole idea is extraterrestrial beings here in spaceships shaped like saucers. But the whole thing set off this idea, they just actually didn't even see saucers. Anyway, I have to say, I have no idea what this man saw. He seemed to be a totally reliable witness. He was a pillar of the community. There's several things that are old about his story. For example, the speed he quoted for these objects was something 8,000 miles per hour. Now, if you're familiar with aircraft at all, that's fantastic speed. I mean, that's about 4 times as fast as Concorde. And they would have, anything flying through Earth's atmosphere at low altitude at that sort of speed would have unleashed a horrendous sonic boom. It would be heard all over the west coast of the US. But But that's by the by. Now, the other thing, so I want to, just to say, this is the artist's impression he approved, just bear that in mind. He, as I said, he was a very interesting aviation. He would have been aware of this because, of course, it was a sensation. When the Germans were leaving in World War II, they discovered all sorts of odd things they were working on. And one of them was a very strange aircraft called the Horton 229. This is it. And that's Arnold's artist's impression. The Horton 229 was what we call flying wing. It was a very advanced jet fighter the Germans had dreamt up. Now, I'm not saying this is what he saw, because the Germans only built one of these things. And at the time he saw it, it was lying in pieces in a crate waiting to be examined by the American Army. But he would have been aware of this shape, this computer shape, as being a futuristic aircraft shape. And I think that was fixing in his mind. So I don't know what he actually saw, but the next big thing, although it wasn't a big thing at the time, was just a couple of weeks later in New Mexico, this place called Roswell, with a huge Army Air Force base, and they reported finding, they actually gave a press release that they had captured a flying saucer. And there indeed is. And lots of you have one who else like that are quite proud of this, and so that this is evidence that the American government had captured a flying saucer. But if you actually read, if you ignore the headline and read the small print, which I appreciate you can't there, but trust me, it's not quite. This is actual quotes from this newspaper, and so we'll start with stuff that starts in great times. Conversation of flying saucer, great. But look at this next line. It talks about the rancher who found it. He found the instrument on his premises, not the craft, not the spaceship, but the instrument. And this instrument to me is box, something like that. So Major Marcel went and some of his guys, so maybe 2 or 3 guys, went around and recovered the disc, this saucer. So what they found, we moved by just 2 or 3 guys. Again, after the intelligence officer did his inspection, the instrument of the instrument, not the spaceship, not the craft, it was flown to higher headquarters. And the fact that we were able to pack it into a plane and fly it, again suggests what they found was very, very, very small. Now, within 24 hours, they withdrew that report, and they instead said what they found was a weather balloon that had gone off course. And this is the sort of legend is they found something like this, but this is an actual photograph of the intelligence officer and some of the stuff he found. And they said that it was a weather balloon. Now, people do say that's odd, because you'd think these Air Force officers would be familiar with weather balloons. The story has now, in subsequent years, changed. What in fact it seems they found was indeed a balloon, but it was just any old weather balloon. It was a thing called Project Mogul Balloon, which was a secret project, so secret it wasn't really known to the public, and so secret these guys at this Air Force base didn't know about it. It was a proposal, it was a real thing. It was a scheme where instruments were hung underneath a balloon, a huge balloon, and sent high up in the atmosphere, and they were simply looking for evidence that the Russians were exploding atomic bombs. And they didn't want anyone to know about this, hence they made this cover story. Basically, one of these balloons went, of course, landed in this rancher's land. These guys never found the press release. That was what everybody wanted, and they had it withdrawn. And just for your information, this is what some of the instrument packages from what the balloon looked like. And they were huge balloons. This is one being released from an aircraft carrier. And this was all secret. It was all done in the 1940s and 50s and only declassified in the 1990s. That's by the by. Another thing that just is kind of interesting about this period when they first reported flying saucers is nobody at the time believed they were spaceships. They did a Gallup poll a few weeks after the Town of Ireland UFO sighting in 1947. What were flying saucers? And this is the response they got from the public. About 30% of people thought they were optical illusions. About 50% thought they were American secret weapons. 10% of people thought they were hoaxes. Well, you read your way through it. One thing you will see, the 9%, some of the biblical prophecies are really old. But anyway, you don't see spaceship anywhere on that. And it took several years before the idea that UFOs were spaceships got cemented in the public imagination. But people did see all sorts of cool things. Then there was a couple of photographs taken in the 1950s. And one of the things to do for a mind is UFOs change with the year. Their fashions change. This one here is pretty well a rocket, even a vapor trail behind it. Whereas this one here, photographed on an aeroplane, is a classic flying saucer. Anyone see any problem in this picture? Look at the shadow. Okay, this is the engine of the plane, allegedly, that the photograph's taken from. Look at the shadows. So there's the shadow of the plane. There need to be two suns in the sky. And I mean, for example, we know for absolutely this one's a hoax. And this one here, I'm pretty sure. I don't really believe there was any cigar-shaped rockets flying through the Brazilian skies at them. Here's a couple more, and it's the classic sort of flying saucers. And there's even sort of diagrams like this, showing all different designs of flying saucer. But a very important thing, this is what cemented the idea that UFOs were spaceships. There's a character called George Adamski. He was of Polish descent, he lived in the US. He had had an interesting career. In the 1930s, he started a religion called the Royal Order of Tibet. And it got quite a few adherents for a brief time. Because one of its rituals was you to drink wine at services. And he ran this during the Prohibition era. And this was actually a crafty way for people to get a drink, basically. Now, by about 1950, he owned a hamburger stand at the bottom of Mount Palomar. And lots of people would be aware, there was a giant telescope. It was at times the biggest telescope in the world at the top of Mount Palomar. And Adamski called himself professor. And he would put his business cards, Professor Adamski of Mount Palomar. And people thought he was some kind of scientist. Anyway, he wrote a book. And in this book he said he went out one day and he met a spaceship. And met a person off the spaceship. And the gentleman he met told him he was a Venusian. Venus, and these people came from the Venus as it was believed to be then, a Venus covered in warm water, sort of Club Med type resort planets. And basically they gave Adamski a lift in their spaceship to come around the solar system to the far side of the moon, where he saw the snowy plains of the far side of the moon. And they took him to Saturn, and he met the people from Saturn, and so on. Now this all sounds silly nowadays, but the thing was Adamski took pictures. This is one of those photos at the top here, and he was, oh look at this fantastic clear photograph of a UFO. I have to say it's a very 1950s UFO. Look at the portholes. Flags aren't going to portholes anymore. Anyway, Adamski wrote a whole series of books. These are the Venusians, by the way, who were sort of these handsome people in skin-tight suits. Adamski was really, really popular as a result of this, and he cemented the idea that UFOs were spaceships from other planets. And there were all sort of technical diagrams of what these things look like inside and so on. I say he wasn't really popular, and it came out recently that he made a visit to the UK, and Prince Philip is apparently a real enthusiast for UFOs, and he tried to set up a meeting between the two, and so on. That's by the by. Now, of course, we all know now this is a complete, total utter hoax. But it did get the idea into people's heads that UFOs were spaceships from other worlds. About this time, there was some attempts to build real flying saucers, which I'll just have a quick skim through. And this is more to show you that the flying saucer idea isn't really very valid. The first attempt to build a flying saucer aircraft was in 1944. A German engineer built in his barn a little flying saucer shaped aeroplane. And he tried to get it flying. It didn't fly very well, and eventually broke up from firewood. But this, by the way, has sparked a whole weird subculture that believes UFOs are controlled by Nazis who escaped from Germany in 1945, are still flying today. And the people who push this idea that some of them are the most unpleasant people you never would meet, but let's not go into that too much. Then Volt, which is was a very successful American company which built fighter aircraft. They had an aerodynamicist who came up with an idea for a plane that could take off in a very short distance and have a sort of semicircular wing. It was nicknamed the Flying Pancake. To try out the idea, they built a small one. Not a small one there. It actually flew very well. But when they tried to scale it up and build a big one, a large one up, it was a disaster. It never made it off the ground. This was about 1946. It was designed for the Japanese. The war was over nowhere near France. So it never went anywhere. This thing here is kind of weird. Basically, a Canadian company came up with an idea for a strange version of takeoff aircraft. And they offered it to the American Army to give them a contract to build it. And it's quite rare for something to fail so badly. It was supposed to have been able to reach altitudes of 30,000 feet. It never flew more than a metre off the ground. And it was supposed to reach speeds of 300 miles per hour. And it never reached more than 10 miles per hour. Basically, the whole theory is wrong. And it only functions as a rather rubbish hovercraft. But you do see documentaries filming this thing flying around, just hovering over the ground. And it looked quite impressive. But it never, anyway, it was at the end. And finally, now this is kind of thing. NASA did look at the idea of flying saucer shaped spacecraft. Well, they didn't like using the term flying saucer, they called them particular designs. And they found there wasn't some advantages. Basically, this is comparing, this is a 60s diagram. This thing here, this sort of pointy nose thing, was nearly built. It's a sort of a thing called the X-20, which was a sort of 60s idea for a space shuttle. It never went anywhere, but they did actually start building a prototype of it. But this thing design is to compare previously design. And the whole advantages, these things are reacting in their atmosphere to keep spraying more evenly over the surface design because it's got a wider base and all that kind of good stuff. But on the other hand, there were loads of disadvantages that are quite uncontrollable. And those were two big things. And they're not trying to be stable. And they never went anywhere. But just by the by, one thing also, I'm not really sure why this is the sort of thing. They thought they didn't have a proper window on the science of this time. And that's the thing they're doing a little periscope to the astronauts to steer the way home time. But anyway, that never happened. So nobody, to the best of my knowledge, ever got successful flying saucer shaped thing. But now it comes to this. I said at the start about UFOs and why I read it frankly. But how do you do it for time? Like, how long do you know? Doing this pretty cool?
Dave, can't you try yourself here?
Oh, right, look. Right, I think it was very well. Yeah, I'm saying this UFO because I said this, but I read this case. This is frightening. And this is a bit of frightening back when I was young. And this is one of the most important stories in the whole history of UFOs. And it's all actually for real astronomy. Right, this is an American couple, Betty and Barney Hill. Very tunnel. Basically, they were driving home from a holiday in Canada one night. And attempting to drive through the mountains area where there wasn't a lot of people about. When they got home, they were a bit concerned because they reckoned it took them longer than 2.5 years old. They also, at the start of their night, they'd been watched a bright light, as they described it, in the sky right beside the moon. The satellite stayed onto the moon. So anyway, so the full two light in the sky, they got home and they reckoned it took them longer too. In the subsequent weeks, they thought they found all stuff like this custom vehicles, but they couldn't figure out where they got them from. They both were prone to very severe nightmares. Eventually, they thought of psychiatrists. Sorry, no lie. They first went to a UFO group. Hill did not want any publicity. The UFO group released their stories to the press, and that's internal. Eventually, went to a psychiatrist. And he hypnotized them, which is quite an unusual thing to do. And under hypnosis, they gave a story. And the story is that during their drive, basically, the light on the moon
have got closer and closer and closer, and it turned out to be a space type, which have landed in front of the road, blocking the road, and they've been taken to a space by a crew. And the crew were little grey men, with great big black eyes. Betty drew one of those pictures of them. And before the spaceship, they were put through a bizarre medical examination. And then they were told that we remembered nothing since afterwards, and they were got the back of the road again and space school and disappeared. What the curious thing though is, the leader of the aliens, of course, Betty spoke English, she said that she had a discussion with them about wanting to prove that this really happened. And he offered to give them a star map they could take home with them if she could point out where Earth was on the star map. And hopefully the leader said that they came from, this is the star map, if Betty redrew it, that they came from down here. And Betty correctly said that was Earth up there. But the leader then, of course, Betty reneged on the promise and never got the map. Anyway. The whole case was written down in the book, and I got a lot of publicity.
In the late 60s, a lady called Marjorie Fish, who was a teacher, an amateur astronomer, and a believer in UFOs, decided she would prove the Hill story. And she spent literally years doing this. What she did is she got lots of the most detailed star catalogues possible. And she used them to make models of the universe around the Earth. Basically, for a radius of 50 light years of the Earth, she tried to make a three-dimensional model with little beads and wires putting all the stars in their actual places. She then walked all around this model, looked at different angles, and tried to get a group of stars that matched this pattern. Now, you can imagine just how difficult that would be and how painstaking it was. And nobody can fault her actual technique, how she did this. And she had actually found a match of stars that fitted it. And this was published in a magazine called Astronomy, and many of you who are into astronomy will know this. It's still around today. It's the only pro-UFO article they've ever published. It provoked a year's worth of correspondence. But she seemed to have used scientific methods to prove that this was a real star map. And what's other interesting about her analysis is some of the stars on the map weren't known when the Hills allegedly were taken aboard a spaceship. They were discovered in the period between. So she seemed to have proven that this really was an accurate map with information that humans didn't know when it was presented. And this has stood for many years. And this is one of the great cases in UFOs. This is cemented in the public imagination. The idea that there's little grey men come from space, kidnap you, can hypnotize you so you don't remember the experience, do the bizarre medical procedures on you, and then let you go again. Plus, this seems to be actually proving all that. Just here is the Hill map, Betty Hill's map with the real stars marked on it. But there are problems with Hill's case. You'll notice I keep mentioning Betty Hill late in the moment. Her husband backed up everything she said, but she always sort of created all the detail work. And that's maybe a bit unfair. She told all the details. There's a psychiatrist who did hypnosis. He was very sympathetic with them. He said, I've got this story out of them, but it's not real. This is a fantasy they shared. And then the light under the moon started the whole thing. Now you can do this yourself if you have any sort of desktop computer program like Starry Nights or Stellarium. And if you don't have any of these, what's stopping you going to get them now? They're great. What you can do is you can recreate the night sky from New Hampshire the night they were driving home. Here it is here. And just to prove I'm not making this up, I did this myself. There's 19th September 1961, and it is set for New Hampshire. And there are details of the moon. Bright light right beside it. But it's not a spaceship, it's Jupiter. And I have to say, I think this is what probably set the whole thing off. They saw a celestial phenomenon they weren't familiar with, and it started the whole experience for them. Then, The star map now looks very shaky. This is not terribly well known, but back in the 1980s, the Europeans launched a satellite called Parcos, which was designed to measure the distance to the stars more accurately than ever been done before. And one of the things it discovered is many of the stars we thought we knew the distances to were actually much further away than they actually are, including some of the stars that Marty Fish used to make her version of the Hill star map. And if you take away from it all the stars we know are incorrect, suddenly the map isn't as good a fix. I've subtracted them there. There's also other things which I haven't bothered to do. Some of the stars that are still left on it are actually, some are closer, some are further than were thought in the 1960s. There's a variety of other things. Basically, the match isn't anything as good now, and probably you could dozens of much better matches, but it just doesn't hang together the way it used to. Anyway.